We take science for granted, don't we? But have you ever stopped to wonder, how did we even learn how to do science in the first place? Well, today we're going to trace the incredible, millennia-long story of how the scientific method itself came to be. It's a huge question, right? I mean, science has given us pretty much everything. Modern medicine, our understanding of the universe, the whole deal. But here's the thing. It wasn't just invented overnight. It was built piece by piece over thousands of years by countless curious minds, each one adding a new tool to the toolbox. So let's start our journey at the very, very beginning. So, our story begins long before there were labs or white coats. It all starts with the most basic human instinct, curiosity. We're going way back to the dawn of civilization, where the very first sparks of inquiry were ignited by just watching things. And later, those sparks were fanned into a real flame by the sheer power of Greek logic. Yeah, before any formal method existed, ancient civilizations in Mesopotamia and Egypt were meticulously observing the world around them. And they weren't just passively watching. They were recording patterns in the stars, tracking the floods of the Nile. They were desperately looking for order so they could predict and survive in a pretty chaotic world. And this early observation was incredibly sophisticated. I mean, get this. Babylonian astronomers were using geometric techniques so advanced that they actually mirrored the basic principles of calculus. We're talking a full 2,000 years before Newton and Leibniz came along. This was truly predictive, data-driven science in its infancy. It's just mind-blowing. And then came this massive shift, a real revolution in thought, led by the ancient Greeks. They introduced a powerful new tool, rationalism. They started saying, hey, maybe the universe isn't just run by the whims of the gods and myths. Maybe there are underlying principles that we can actually understand through pure logic and reason. And here is the perfect example of that new approach in action. Aristotle didn't just sit around and ponder what an animal was. He actually got his hands dirty. He systematically observed and dissected over 50 different species. And from that, he created one of the very first biological classification systems, all based on direct evidence. He was literally building knowledge from the ground up. Okay, so observation and logic were absolutely critical building blocks, but there was a key ingredient still missing: the radical idea that you have to actively test your theories out in the real world. This brings us to the actual birth of experimentation. And this is it, the experimental method. This is the bedrock of all modern science. And this principle was really championed by these brilliant scholars during the Islamic Golden Age. They were the ones who argued that it's not enough to just think about the world. You have to design experiments to challenge your own ideas. A key figure here, an absolute giant, was Ibn al-Haytham, or al-Hazan as he was known in the West. His work, especially his book of optics, was completely revolutionary. He didn't just theorize about how vision worked. No, he conducted controlled experiments with light and lenses to actually prove it. This insistence on experimental proof, it was a monumental leap forward for humanity. Then, this powerful idea of testing reality gets rediscovered and totally supercharged during the Renaissance. Thinkers, artists, engineers, they all started to see empirical observation as a form of power. It was a way to unlock the true secrets of everything, from human anatomy to astronomy. And who better to embody this spirit than Leonardo da Vinci? I mean, just look at that number, 13,000 pages of notes. This wasn't just a hobby, it was a relentless, almost obsessive dedication to documenting the world exactly as it was, from the way water swirls to the mechanics of a bird's wing. All right, now we get to the main event. In the 17th century, all these separate threads, the observation, the logic, the experimentation, they were finally woven together into one coherent framework. And it was done by a few giants who would build the very foundation of modern science as we know it. Galileo's true genius was in formalizing the controlled experiment. It wasn't just about watching things fall anymore, it was about precisely measuring them. To test his ideas about motion, he realized he needed to measure time incredibly accurately. So what did he do? He invented clever water clocks that could track tiny fractions of a second. He brought mathematical rigor straight into the lab. So at the same time, you've got Francis Bacon, and he's basically codifying the logic of science. He was a huge champion of what's called inductive reasoning. Instead of starting with some big, grand theory, he said you should start small.
Go out, gather data. For instance, observe 100 swans and notice they're all white. Then, and only then, do you form a theory from the evidence. All swans are white. You build your theory from the ground up.
And then came Isaac Newton, the great synthesizer. He brilliantly fused Galileo's rigorous experiments with Bacon's systematic logic, and then he powered the whole thing with the language of mathematics. The result was a single, elegant, and unbelievably powerful framework to describe the laws of the entire universe.
This is just astounding to think about. When Newton set out to describe gravity and motion, the kind of math he needed to do it, well, it just didn't exist yet. So he invented it. He literally created calculus as a purpose-built tool just to solve the physics problems he was wrestling with.
Okay, so the foundation was built. But for science to really take off, it needed to become more than just the work of a few geniuses. It had to become a robust, self-correcting system. The 19th and 20th centuries were all about building the rules and institutions that make science so reliable today. And this is where we see the pillars of the modern scientific world really come into focus. We get things like formal hypothesis testing, which you can see in Darwin's meticulous notebooks. We get the emergence of peer review to have other experts check your work. And we see the development of powerful statistical tools to find the real signal hiding in all the noise. Now, in the 20th century, the philosopher Karl Popper added this really crucial filter. He called it falsifiability. That theory about all swans are right, it's scientific because you can actually test it. All you have to do is find one black swan, and boom, the theory is proven false. A claim that can't be proven false isn't science. This is what keeps science honest and always moving forward. And it's just stunning when you realize how recent some of our most vital tools really are. The absolute gold standard for modern medicine, the randomized controlled trial, it was first conducted in 1948. That's not ancient history. That is well within a single human lifetime. And all of that brings us to right now, because the scientific method is not some finished product sitting in a museum, it's still evolving. And today, technology is triggering another profound transformation in how we do science. We have officially entered the era of computational science. Right now, AI algorithms can sift through millions of patient records to find potential new drugs, or analyze massive galactic surveys to spot cosmic weirdness, all at a scale and speed that is just far, far beyond human capacity. The actual practice of science is changing right before our eyes. A single particle physics experiment can generate petabytes of data. That's millions of gigabytes. We have automatic labs run by robots conducting experiments 24/7. And discovery isn't happening in isolation anymore. It's a massive, global, collaborative effort. So in the end, the scientific method isn't really a dusty textbook of rules. It's a living, breathing process. It's this amazing toolkit that we as a species have been building and refining for thousands of years. It's simply our best tool for separating truth from fiction, and it's all fueled by creativity and curiosity. The only question left is, what are we going to discover next?